So you've put your home on the market with a realtor. Or maybe you're working with a realtor to look for your home to purchase. And now all of a sudden, the realtor's gone. What do? What happens? It's the Real Estate Show. Welcome to the Real Estate Show. My name's Rick Naples. I am the broker owner of Zone Realty LLC. You zone your home. As I said in the opening of the show, it's a big decision when you're looking to put your house on the market. There are a lot of agencies that are out there, and there are a lot of realtors that you can choose from. And you finally decide on the agency that you're going to work with, and you like the realtor that you start your relationship with, and you do the paperwork and put your house up for sale. On the flip side, let's say you're looking to purchase a house. So you meet with a number of realtors, or maybe it's a realtor that you know, and you start to work with them, and you've gone out and you've looked at a few houses, and things seem to be going fine. Then a question comes up, and you call into the realtor's office, and you're told the realtor's no longer there. They're gone. What happens? I mean, now what? Your house is listed with the realtor you thought you were going to do business with, and they're no longer with that agency. Or you've been out a couple of times with that realtor, and all of a sudden they're no longer with the agency. What happens? I signed paperwork. Now what? I mean, does my house come off the market and I got to start all over again? What happens? Well, first, let's kind of set the groundwork here and talk about a couple of things. A realtor is what they call an independent contractor. They're a self-employed business person. And as a business person, realtors need to look at their expenses, or basically control how they run their business. Now, under the laws of our state, of course, a realtor must work under a broker. So this is why realtors work with different agencies. They have to, in order to practice with their license, be under a responsible broker that's in good standing with the state. But they are not employees. They are independent contractors. And sometimes realtors find themselves faced in a situation, whatever the motivation might be, to either get out of the business or perhaps change and work for a different agency. You know, in our business, a lot of times there's the philosophy that the grass may be greener on the other side of the fence. And sometimes realtors get frustrated with the agencies they're with, and they get recruited or they seek out and they go to work for another agency. But that's the realtor's decision. It's not your decision as the client. So what happens to you? Well, when you started that relationship with the realtor, you signed paperwork, you signed contract. In other words, if you put your home on the market, you've signed a listing agreement for a certain term, agreeing to pay a certain commission with an agency. Or you're looking to work with a realtor, with an agency, and you've gone out and you're going to look at houses, and you've signed a representation agreement with that agency. So now what happens when the realtor you're working with leaves? Here's a piece of truth. In our state, when you sign an agreement to work with the realtor to market your house or sell your house, or again, as a buyer working with the realtor to purchase a house, the paperwork you've signed is actually with the agency that is representative of who the realtor is with. So in other words, the broker of that agency is actually the owner or the controller of that paperwork, not the individual realtor. Now, I said earlier, realtors are independent contractors. But the way it's set up is the realtor cannot work on their own unless they become a broker themselves. So they work under an agency. The broker of the agency, not the office manager, not the transaction controller, not the team leader, the broker of the agency is the one who is the owner of the company or the owner of all the buyer representation agreements that are signed or listing contracts that are signed. This is why I've stressed on the real estate show why sometimes it's better when you're making a choice to work with a realtor that works for a smaller real estate firm as opposed to a huge franchise. And the reason for this is because you have the opportunity to not only get to know the realtor that's going to show you houses or is going to be helping market your house, but you get to know the broker owner. You know, with big companies, you don't have that opportunity to actually walk in the door and see the owner or talk to the owner of the company, the one who's the decision maker. You have to go through channels, or you have to call some strange 1-800 number in order to work through channels, and you never really get to the big guy. So having said that, as I said before, realtors are independent contractors, and they choose what agency they're going to hang their license with and what broker they're going to work with. But sometimes they'll change. Now, here's what happens when the realtor you're working with all of a sudden switches companies or just disappears. The broker or the owner of the agency or the licensed broker or registered broker for that particular agency has the responsibility of overseeing all of the agreements that are signed while that realtor is doing their business. So if the realtor decides to switch to another agency, what happens to you depends on what their independent contractor's agreement was with the broker they were with. In other words, if they don't have an exit clause, if they just abruptly leave and switch companies, or they get out of the business, it's a business decision they may be making for their individual business, but it doesn't take into account what happens to you specifically. In most cases, the broker who is responsible for the agreement is contacted, and the broker will assign another agent within their agency to take over where the realtor who was there left off. In other words, another realtor within their office that you can work with that's going to continue marketing your home or is going to continue helping you find another home. This is why it's so important to work with an agency where you get to know all the parties that are involved. Just in case things don't go the way they're supposed to go, you do have a point of contact that you can talk to. Now, when a broker takes over the deal, sometimes they may take it over themselves if they're a small agency, or as I said, they may assign it to another agent or realtor within their scope to follow through on the paperwork that was signed and to make sure that there's no interruption in the flow of the way things have been going. In other words, if your house has been on the market and there's been showings going on the house and the representative realtor has left to go to another company, the broker steps in and makes sure there's continuity, that things continue on so that you get the experience that you were wanting when you signed with that agency to begin with. And it's the same thing on the purchase side. Now, in some cases, realtors may move from one agency to another agency. And again, depending on their agreement, maybe you don't necessarily care about the agency that the realtor was with. You love the person you were working with. You like that specific realtor. And they've moved to another company. Now what do? Can you just follow them to the other company? I mean, you have a contract that's signed with the agency they were with. And again, the realtor is not an employee. They're an independent contractor. So if they decide to shift their independent contractor agreement to another agency, it's a new ball game for them. Anything that they've left behind is owned by the agency they previously were with. But again, what happens if you want to stick with the realtor? Let me talk about that right after this. So I'm talking about here on the Real Estate Show about what happens when your realtor is gone. In other words, the realtor that you've chosen to work with, no matter what agency they're with, has made a business decision to either stop being a realtor, maybe getting out of the business, or perhaps they've decided to move from one real estate agency to another real estate agency because they felt the other agency might offer them a better personal career path, or maybe the money is better over here than it is over there. Whatever the reasons are, the important thing is you signed an agreement with the agency through that realtor to do the real estate transaction you're looking to do, whether it's selling your house or buying a house or whatever that situation might be. And again, as I said earlier, this is why it's so important to get to know who the broker is in that particular office situation or with that agency. Because if that happens, everything falls on the broker to continue the continuity of that agreement, to make sure you get the experience, that positive experience in your real estate transaction that was pretty much promised to you when you started the whole endeavor. Now, sometimes the realtors will have an independent agreement with their contractors, the agents that work under them, which will say to the agent, should you decide to leave the company for whatever reason, if you're continuing as a licensed realtor, we will release your clients from the contract with our agency to allow you to sign them under a new agreement with whatever new agency you happen to be with. And this is most common when you're looking at realtors that are working with buyers. They spend a lot of time developing that relationship and getting pre-qualifications done and finding out, what kind of house they're looking for and showing them houses and so on and so forth. So a lot of times you'll see that the broker will allow the realtor, even though they're going to another company, to take those agreements with them and re-sign them under the new agency. Because again, the realtor is not necessarily the person you're doing business with. You're doing business with the agency the realtor's with. That's how we're set up in our state. The realtor is the face. They're the person you're working with, but it's actually the agency that you're signing to do the business with. Now, some brokerships have agreements with their realtors that if the realtor leaves, the broker will take over that business and either assign it to another agent within their company to continue on working with the individuals, or the broker themselves will step in and continue as far as the paperwork is concerned. There is another option, and that option is, again, depending on the independent contractor agreement that's been signed between the broker and the realtor that's working with them. And that could be that the starting agency may want reimbursement for the monies that they've spent marketing a property, or the monies they've spent to keep things in play when you're looking for a house. And they'll have an agreement where the realtor can take the contract to the other agency, but when the deal finalizes, the first agency gets a portion of whatever commission is paid to kind of reimburse them for the expenses that they had when they first started. That doesn't necessarily involve you. That, again, is the independent contractor agreement that the realtor has signed between their brokership or whatever agency they're working with and themselves. The main thing in any situation is when a business changes, individual, agency, corporation, whatever it is, if you have a relationship, if you're doing business with that company, you need to know what happens should things change. Here on the Real Estate Show, I've gone through dozens of things about real estate transactions, and we've talked about from beginning to end the process of looking at a home, the process of marketing a home, what the relationship between the realtor and the client is, and what the realtor's responsibilities are and what the client's responsibilities are. But on this show, I'm trying to answer the big what if question. You know, a few years back, we went through a situation where a lot of the banks were getting bought up or were merging or were being acquired by bigger banks. And there was all kinds of changes going on. And if you were a client of that bank, all of a sudden you were faced with, now what happens? Does my money stay in the same place? Or who's this new entity that's taking over that bank? And what happened to my friend, the teller that I saw every week when I was doing my deposits? Because the bank changed names. And there was a little bit of apprehension as to what was going on. And you get bombarded with all kinds of letters and notes and information that gets shot at you because this bank bought that bank, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to continue the relationship, and so on and so forth. Bottom line is, you face, what are you going to do? You're going to stay with them, or are you going to switch over and go to another bank? It's the same thing when you're doing a real estate transaction. When you're working with the realtor, again, the realtor is an independent contractor. They're not an employee of the agency. And as a self-employed business person, the realtor is going to make decisions during the course of their career that, quite honestly, is best for them. That's what they need to do as a business person. So sometimes you get caught in the drag, or you get left out somewhere where your realtor's gone, and you need to know, well, what happens if a momentum is built up and my realtor leaves either the business or goes to another company. Let's look at this quick little presentation. I'll be back to talk a little bit more about what happens. Change sometimes can be a good thing, and even though we're a little resistant to change, you need to keep an open mind. And as I've been saying on this show, when you're working with a realtor, again, you're working with an independent contractor, and the realtor's in business for themselves, so they can make business decisions for themselves that not necessarily are in line with what your particular goal is. Realtors get paid a commission. And when they sign with an agency, they sign an agreement. And in that agreement, it says, here's what I'm going to be paid. It's exactly when you get hired by an employer to be an employee. Here's what you're going to be paid. Here's your hourly wage. Here's what your salary is per year, and so on and so forth. And sometimes we have to make decisions when it comes to our own individual income. If there's an opportunity to make more income someplace else, we may decide to leave the firm we're with and go to another firm. In real estate, it's a little bit different because, again, your contract is signed with the broker. It's signed with that agency, not with the individual realtor. So if the realtor decides to make a business decision and move someplace else, you need to know what's happening with the agreement that you've signed. Is the momentum going to continue on? I'm going to work with somebody else in that office. Is the broker taking over the deal? What happens? And if a decision is made where the contract can be broken, in other words, the broker agrees to release the contract so the agent that you love working with, you can continue working with at their new firm, you have to sign all new paperwork with the new agency. And any momentum that was built up, especially if you put your house on the market, starts to slow down and you're restarting over. So it becomes a big decision on your part, no matter how much you like the realtor, as to whether or not you wish to continue with the agency you're with or move on with that realtor to the next agency. This is the portion of the real estate show I call the real estate mailbag. It's my opportunity to address questions that are emailed to me here at the real estate show, or just to share conversations that I get involved in when I'm just out there. We're talking here on the show about when a realtor disappears. In other words, the realtor was with this company and now the next day that it was this company. And what happens to you, the client, when that happens, your choices and the different events that may take place. A lot of times when you do paperwork with a company, if you sign a contract with a company, you're signing that contract because you know fully what you're getting into. You know, they say never sign anything unless you read it. So when you're meeting with a realtor, if you go to the realtor's office, to the agency to which they're assigned, and you sit down with them and you take the time to go through the paperwork, especially if you're a buyer, or if you're at your house and the realtors come out to your house and you're looking to put the house on the market and you're going through that paperwork, please take the time to understand what it is you're actually signing, what you're agreeing to. Make the realtor explain it, and also ask the realtor the what if questions. What if this happens? What if that happens? I highly suggest to my audience out there that when you do sign a listing agreement or a purchase agreement, that you do take the time and ask the realtor, would it be possible for me to come in and visit your agency? You want to be able to go in, see the agency, meet with the broker of the agency, so you know who it is, even though the face is the realtor you're working with. You want to know who it is you're actually signing to do business with. My name is Rick Naples, and this has been The Real Estate Show. I thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.